It's great to spend some time together, Nicholas. I first came across ID Genève when the New York Times articles came out, and I remember the headline image of the circular wine in silver, and then loved everything about the article, from how intentional you were about sourcing the materials to the processes of building the wristwatches. Would love to get to know you more and your story, and then how that's informed your journey in circularity up until today.
Thank you very much, Daniel. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for the invitation here. And well, my name is Nicolas Freudiger, and I'm one of the three co-founders of ID Genève Watches, and I'm also the CEO behind. Love to talk about the chief everything officer. I come from a background of hospitality. I graduated the Lausanne Hotel School, and then worked a couple of years in corporate until I really had this click moment and where I really, sort of faced the mirror and asked myself, what is the legacy I want to leave behind? And I wanted to build a positive legacy. So this is why I quit my job in Zurich, this corporate position, and then I moved back to Geneva. And then I went to look for my childhood friend, Cedric, the watchmaker, and together with Singal, also who's a talented designer, we decided to launch ID Genève Watches in December 2020 on a crowdfunding campaign where we reached actually 100% of the objective within 48 hours. So we knew there was something to be done in that in that niche, but we're very glad. I think we did quite a few steps now, but I'm also glad, I did it, because I think looking back now, I think I really wanted to avoid having regrets at 65 years old, when I retired, not having had the courage to do it, just do it. And so this is why I'm very grateful, and I'm very privileged to be here and speaking about ID Genève watches.
That's a great story. If we go through the story of ID Genève, what was the original idea that you had with the co-founders, and how did it all get started?
Well, when we look at industries and how to best leverage transition in industries, we realize that, usually there's a brand, there's a technology that comes in and that transformed the industry, right? And we thought in the Swiss watchmaking industry there was not this player, and we call it impact native. Impact native, that means, we're born from impact, and everything we do is linked to our values, our convictions, and because we believe conviction, this is an ingredient for charism, so it's very positive, and this is also something that no matter what, no matter what is going on, you stand by your convictions. And we thought that, we could use the power of Swiss made watches and put it at the service of climate heroes and climate solutions, to accelerate the ecological transition.
Let's go into the actual watch itself. There is so much intention behind every piece, from the case to the straps to the movements. Walk us through all those parts and how they are built on a
Mhm.
circular model.
So circularity for us is all about the ecosystem, as you mentioned, goes beyond the product, but the product itself is very important. And to talk about some product initiatives, we just started by looking at, the different stakeholders of this ecosystem. And we've realized that, in Switzerland, we don't melt steel, we don't recycle the steel, right? Switzerland is a very small country. And we thought, we wanted to create, together with a partner in Jura, so the rural part of Switzerland, we wanted to create a short route ecosystem on steel. And we did it for the first time with 100% reprocessed steel, within 200 kilometers. That gave us an impact 10 times lower than the industry average. And we went even further with the circular S collection, S for solar, with the remelting of that reprocessed steel, through a solar furnace. So that's quite amazing, So we're not using solar panels, we're using convex mirrors, so mirrors that are a little bit convex, and we're using directly the sun of the sun beams against the mirrors to remelt the steel. And with this technology, which is actually not a new technology, by the way, but we bring down the carbon footprint by 165 times lower what the industry average is doing. And so for us, it was very important to measure it. And that was just the case. Now, when we go to the movement, so we work exclusively with automatic refurbished movements. That means we source them from unsold stocks. we refurbish them in Switzerland, and we put them back in circulation. So no compromise on quality, but aesthetically it can have differences, but that's the beauty of refurbishing them, right? It's like that you don't get something perfect, but you like just aesthetically you get differences between the different watches, and that's something beautiful to have, and we're very proud of doing so. Then for the straps, we focus on having alternatives to leather, animal leather, not because we're vegan ourselves. I think but we because we consider that, again, there is a role here to play. Did you know that 95% of watches sold worldwide over 1,000 USD, they are Swiss made, right? So this is the responsibility that we have. We're talking the top 0.5%, right, of the population, right, with those watches, people who can afford that. So we thought, we need to showcase something different. Going for animal leather was, the easy solution. And obviously there can be also some sustainable options there, right? But we wanted to bring this eco-innovation aspect to it. So what we've done, is like we've worked with wine residue, we've worked with hemp, we've worked with green waste from London parks. We've even worked, last year we launched a wine residue strap with the on the back, the name of the chateau, so the castle in France where we collect the waste of wine. So we go up to the millésime, so which is, this castle is called Chateau Beaucastel, Chateau Neuf du Pape, which is one of the most prestigious wine region in France. And we can tell you, like for certain that we use this wine residue from the year 2022, sorry, on your wrist. And having this traceability and this transparency, I think for me, this is the new identity of luxury. Going back to the name ID Genève Watches, ID stands for identity. And what we want to showcase is that through this recognitions of Swiss made watch, through this power, we can put it to good use, right? And use it to shed light on intangible, on the intangible, right? So these solutions that can be, when you think about a watch, it's 80 gram of stainless steel, it's 20 gram of straps. So volume wise is not that important, but value wise, I think this is where you get your impact. This is where you get to wear something on your wrist that can be a conversation starter, that can be, and what better way than just a Swiss watch, right, to do it. And so we're taking this positioning. It's niche at the moment, but we're expanding globally, and we're taking this leadership in eco-innovative watches.
That's fascinating. And I love how at every step you're questioning why was it done like this previously, and then how can we make it better, and how can we make it in a way that we're reducing waste. The communication challenge when you started out, these topics of using recycled stainless steel, using green waste for straps, they may have been very foreign to people in the luxury market space. It's a market that is built on exclusivity. What were some of the things you learned in those early years and even today about how to communicate these topics to your potential customers so that they can see the value in not only IDs and F, but the value in a circular economy model?
Very good question. I think there's always, this trade-off. When people think about recyclability and quality, they think there is this trade-off. And I think we're here to showcase that they can go hand in hand, right? That we should actually change our perception on recycled materials, right? For example, let's take the word waste, and I think, in 15 to 20 years, it should disappear from our vocabulary. We should talk about surplus, and how are we managing this surplus, right? And because we need to become more circular. We're looking at the circularity report, the gap report, and we're saying that it's also good. It's a good opportunity for the business, right, to be circular, because we first you save some costs. You're not going back to nature to really take it from it again. So you're reusing, what I call above the ground stocks. So what's already out there, and putting it back in circulation, allows you to avoid, eliminate also sometimes new extractions. And I think this is where we should be focusing. And I think the luxury industry somehow is a totem industry. As I mentioned before, low volume, high value, and we should be leading by example. It should be an example. So like imagine, Louis Vuitton or Rolex, disclosing their recyclability, disclosing more information here, and using those alternatives, right? What it would create as a cascade effect on that other industries, because other industries look up to the luxury industry. We forgot that this is the case, and I think that then the impact can be huge if we manage to reach this level of engagement from the industry. So we've set a mission to ourselves, that we need to change the perception. We call it the underlying narrative of luxury. We need to create a new narrative of luxury going forward. And obviously this will take time, but I think, we're on the right track so far to do it. And for us, every day I meet a climate hero, a climate solution that amaze me, and I think
Mhm.
we're just scratching the surface right now of what we can do in the next 5 years. So I'm quite excited really about the future and what we can do with those climate heroes.
Yeah, and speaking of a climate solution that's amazing, so your circular C is crazy. It's built from regenerative carbon fibers, and so if you dent it or you scratch it, you just have to heat it, and then all of a sudden it goes back to its original form. How did that come together?
So a big shout out to Amael, the CEO of Compare Technologies. I think, we met because it was through a common friend, and he was like, "Oh, you guys should talk." And when I sat down with him, I realized, what he's doing is amazing. As you said, he has alien technology. Amal himself, worked his PhD on that technology, right? And he's did his PhD at EPFL in Lausanne, and we said to each other, how can we, again, use ID Genève as a platform, right, to shed light on his technology, on his work, and we decided to partner up with the Circular C. And I think that has been amazing because we've done 20 pieces, sold out in less than 48 hours, and now we've done 80 pieces, and now we're all almost sold out. Which I think we just have a couple left, and that showcase again, is how do we make this also more desirable through the platform of ID Genève, as being a luxury watch brand, and showcasing that we can do it. We made it happen in less than a year, and we're very agile into the conversation, and we're working on new projects, exciting projects in the future, that we will be presenting in New York on the 25th of September. So we're quite proud of this collaboration, and being able to showcase a technology where obviously we're not going to save the world with those watches. That's not the case. And you're not going to buy a watch to save the world. But again, it's a proof of concept, right, that we're making, that Swiss made watches are using his technology, and we're believing that this can be a game changer in the carbon material industry, right? And if you were to make boats, skis, because we're in Switzerland, I think this is where you can get your impact, because you can repair that material up to 60 times, so you can extend the life cycle of this component by 60 times its normal use. So that's quite amazing. And yeah, it's an alien technology. So we're very proud of having it, and our community really likes to wear it on the wrist and explain it to people. And that's quite unique again, for the industry.
That's exciting, and it's also a beautifully designed watch as well. You're not compromising. The other recent release is the Elements collection. What have you learned from your first model that you put out up until now that you've incorporated into this new Elements collection?
So the Elements collection first is our first collection, for the last 4 years of the company. It's really the first collection, because we've worked with the Circular collection, which encompasses Circular One, Circular S, and Circular C. And now we're going really with the Elements collection. So first of all, it's a tribute to the prerequisite of life on Earth, right? We could not be here without the elements of nature. And it's also where, we want people to connect back to the elements, right? To this basic, it's to sort of fix the basics. And we want people to connect, whether it's for air, that, we've had a lot of feedback from people that like meditation, that like breathing techniques. For water, for example, myself, I love to be in water in the Lake Geneva. Every summer, I'll be there, at least once per day, and this is my connection to nature, right? And it's really about finding it and cherishing it that allows you to go a step further to defend it and to stand for nature. And our new tagline is, wearing the power of nature on your wrist, because we see that there's a lot of power and aspirational storytelling on the elements, and we're here to carry that message further. And so now looking at the product itself, so we've used of course the recycled stainless steel that is still the same that we're using, and we've come up with a quite interesting technology, which is called morphotonics. It's also a company based in Lausanne, and we use here the same machines as Swiss passport and Swiss bills. So we're using really this diffraction of light, where you get that feeling of brilliance, right? And this was a way to showcase that we can. This is a low tech, because in the end it's modern Gutenberg press, So it's really
Mhm.
pressing against the dials that we get this, and we go up to the micron, right? So it's not a laser engraving; it's something very special, very unique, and protected. So you get a full authenticity of the watch, and then you get also this eternal brilliance that you're looking at, when you look at a jewel. And we thought it would be very nice to give this brilliance to nature and to the four elements, and having the fifth element, very very much powerful. If you look at on our website, so idgenevewatches.com, you can see the fifth element, that this is the hero of the collection. This is the limited edition, 50 pieces only worldwide. That and this is the most powerful. This is where you can see the whole technology of morphotonics. And each time you will turn up the dial, you will discover new secrets, new details that come to life. And that was very important for us, really, to let that fifth element to because in what we understood is that the fifth element is different from every culture, point of view.
Mhm.
For some it's love. In the US it's love. For some it's metal. For some, it represents, the whole four other elements. So we decided to leave it open, and just, for us, it's our connection to the four elements, right? And sometimes we're very extractive, and this is why you have on the indexes a hologram of a diamond, right? So you will see on the indexes, we'll have hologram of diamonds. This is again, just talking about the narrative of luxury. Sometimes we focus a
Mhm.
lot on gold and diamonds, but I think there's much more out there that you can create. And in the end, it's only a perception, right? I always tell the people, it's only been 100 years old that we've talked so much about diamonds and gold, and I think we can still turn this around, right? And create new storytelling that are, as you said, as beautiful aesthetically. This is very important, but then there are less toxic for Mother Earth. So that was our objective with the Elements collection.
It's a beautiful collection. I remember, well, I've been following you since that New York Times article, and then I looked up interviews of you and your co-founders. This was a couple of years ago. And during the interview, you two were talking about how you're going to bring the stainless steel into the straps as well. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I remember messaging you on LinkedIn about it. And then when the Elements collection came out and it was a stainless steel bracelet, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
True, true. You did text me about it, right, on LinkedIn. You did text me about it. Yeah, I recall. And now we're coming out with it. So this year with the Elements collection, the circular one all will also have its own stainless steel strap. So it was a lot of demand, but obviously we had so many things in the pipeline that we really need to wait for the right moment. But 2025 is the moment we will be able to deliver on the stainless steel strap.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Everything you've been talking about with processes and how you're using materials, it's new to the watch world. And I imagine ID Genève does a ton of research. When you look at the luxury market outside of watches, where do you feel is the area that's most open to disruption to bring in a circularity model?
I look a lot at the fashion industry. I'm in a lot of circular. Last time in the New York Climate Week, I was part of a group, that was looking at circular fashion, and there's no circular luxury stream right now, but I hope there will be in the future. But but fashion, has been also leading the conversation, that world where, you know, we're not as essential as the other industry. You talk about energy, you're like, okay, well, I really need energy to live my life. Luxury and fashion is all close to the same, that you don't need it to have a good life. Although I would challenge that, because we've seen that, for example, in COVID, in the COVID period, we've seen double-digit growth in that industry, right? We were at 11.8% year-on-year growth, which is amazing. Everyone would kill for that. And so no, I really look at the fashion industry. There's a lot of brands, that are very inspiring. I'm talking about Chloe, first B Corp into luxury. I'm talking about Gani, love the founder. He's doing an extremely good job with that. Looking at Patagonia, Pangaya, those are all great players that we admire for their convictions and the collaborations that they do also. And in the luxury, I think, industry, what I want to say about my peers is that there's a lot of positive initiatives going on. I think what we're lacking is a bit of more communication and more transparency. I think we're seeing the cursor that is shifting from this mystical luxury, sort of an old identity. You think about this watchmaker in a workshop, and you don't really know how the watch is produced, to more transparency. Because this is what the new generation wants, right? Is authenticity, traceability, and transparency. I think those are the three key words going forward, and I think we need to deliver on that. And it's easier for us, to say, because I mean, we're impact native. We're born in December 2020. We don't have this heritage, but I think some brands are doing great things, and that they will come out more. And I think this will be also positive for us, as we're going to be leading this positioning. And I think, quite humbly now I can say that we're also a global leader for Swiss watchmaking in that niche positioning.
Yes, absolutely. The transparency aspect, just how you were talking a few minutes ago about here's how the case is made, here's how the straps are made, here's how the movement's made. I don't recall any of the luxury watchmakers sitting a consumer down and saying, hey, here's the steps to how the watch is made. It's all done behind the wall, maybe on purpose, but also because there's a lot of complexity behind it.
Because of the heritage also, I mean, they were born in an other era than ID Genève Watches, so I can understand why they're reluctant. I mean, it's just about changing the mindset, right? And changing the mindset of, being more collaborative also on some aspect, right? Because and disrupting also, for me, is like, for example, I was looking at packaging. Tell you an anecdote. The time we started developing our packaging, we came, because we're watch collectioners, and we came to work with, bags full of packagings, and we realized that actually those packaging we never used, just for the ceremonial aspect of it. And then they were just, taking dust in our basement, right? For like ages. And we kept them. Yeah, well, perhaps if we sold the watch, at some day. And we said, well, actually, what, our commitment is going to be that we make packaging to perform, but not to last. Meaning, in a sense, that all of our packaging going forward will be home compostable. And that's a huge commitment, right? And I think we can do that, but we hope also that, we get also the industry, to think about it, because I think it's important for
Mhm.
the ceremonial aspect. And when you go to the boutique we have in New York City, the one vendor built with Watches of Switzerland, uh, when you go there, expect, to have this ritual of, having a packaging to open your watch and being able to gift it to somebody you love. And that's super important. And we're not saying, let's take that out. We're just saying, what about what happens after, And what happens is that with our packaging made out of mycelium, for example, you can put it in your garden and watch it disappear in 45 days. With the seaweed packaging, you can dissolve it into water and use it to fertilize your plants at home. And that's the point. That's the point where we enhance even the experiential factor there, right? And we go beyond delivering just the ceremonial aspect. You get this experience at home. And we get so many feedback from customers, photos with people, so happy of composting their packaging that they share it with their community. And so we see something, this is an opportunity again. I'm not talking about just composting it for the sake of composting it. I think we need to be clear. This is also something nice for the user experience, and we've seen it, and we're going to continue working with that.
That's remarkable about the fertilizer and how you can put the package on your houseplants at home. That's incredible. If you had to shout out one company that is doing great work around whether it's watches or it's a circular business model in the luxury space, who would you shout out and what do they do?
Very good question. Give me a moment because I have a lot of favorite topics. One thing that I can tell you is that Chanel, so in Paris, and talking about the watch division, but also the fashion division, is doing amazing things. They've taken, an avant-garde, look at it, and their programs are very intense. They're not communicating anything about it, but they're doing the work. And so I'm very inspired by this brand, and also now in the more fashion premium sector, I'm really fond of the founder of Ganni, which does premium clothing, and I really admire his conviction. He's very much profile I look to, as an entrepreneur, because he started the brand and created something quite amazing in the fashion space. Yeah, I encourage you, all the listener to have a look at those two brands.
Absolutely. And I'll also check them out as well. Okay, last question. If you had to recommend anything to read or watch that has had an impact on you in the work that you do, whether it's recent or years ago, what would you recommend people go read or watch?
I'm gonna go with something that is gonna make you laugh. Perhaps the film Don't Look Up that came out in 2021. With Leonardo DiCaprio playing in it. I mean, obviously because we're proud of having him as an investor into our brand, but more than that, he creates a fiction, right? Fiction that allows you to have this parallel between this meteorite coming to Earth and and climate change, and I love fiction, because it's about laughing, it's about emotion, it's about crying, and I look at our watches as a fiction also. It's a way, to avoid putting people in a room and showing them charts of, like very negative charts, saying, we're doomed. Fiction is a way to be joyful, to be hopeful, and to act on something, and I admire people that are doing that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend to watch it. And also a few the other documentaries he's been doing since 2005. I think he's been very active in that field.
That's a great partnership you have with him. Nicolas, amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Daniel, for the invitation.